Cassandra Moore's signature on the divorce papers should have been the end, a clean break from Dante Rossi, the mafia boss whose name made grown men flinch. But freedom has a price she didn't expect to pay. 3 years later, when her daughter whispers, "Mama, someone's watching us," Cassandra knows her carefully constructed new life is crumbling. Because Dante never let go. And his rival Marco just found what Dante's been hunting for all along. If you're captivated by stories of survival, obsession, and second chances, stay until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Cassandra stared at the divorce papers spread across Dante's mahogany desk, her maiden name already typed in the blank space where her married name used to belong. Moore, not Rossi. Never Rossi again if she had anything to say about it. "Just sign it," Dante said from his position by the window. He didn't turn around. His reflection in the glass showed nothing, no emotion, no regret, just that infuriating calm he wore like armor. Her hand trembled as she gripped the pen. Not from sadness, from rage so pure it made her teeth ache. "Looking forward to your freedom?" she asked. "Aren't you?" 3 years. 3 years of living in this fortress, of learning which footsteps meant danger, of perfecting the art of being invisible while standing right in front of him. 3 years of watching him choose everything, business, power, reputation, over her, over them. She signed. The scratch of pen on paper sounded too loud in the silence. "There." Cassandra pushed the documents across the desk. "You're free." Dante finally turned. His dark eyes scanned her face, lingering on details she wished he wouldn't notice. The weight she'd lost, the circles under her eyes, the way her collarbones pressed sharp against her skin. At 32, he looked like something carved from marble, beautiful and cold and untouchable. "You should eat more," he said. The audacity nearly made her laugh. "You don't get to care about that anymore." Cassandra, "Don't." She stood, gripping the worn leather bag she'd packed that morning. Everything she owned that mattered fit inside it. Wasn't that pathetic? "We're done. That's what you wanted." His jaw tightened. For a moment, something flickered behind his eyes, something that looked almost like regret. But Dante Rossi didn't do regret. He did calculated decisions and cold strategy and violence when necessary. Feelings were liabilities. "My men will escort you out." "How generous." "It's not safe for you to..." "To what? Leave?" Cassandra's laugh came out sharp. "I've been a prisoner here for 3 years. Don't pretend you're worried about my safety now." She turned before he could respond, before the treacherous part of her that still remembered what his hands felt like could betray her. The hallway stretched ahead, all dark wood and expensive art that meant nothing. Victor stood by the door, Dante's right hand built like a tank and just as subtle. "Mrs. Rossi," he said, then caught himself. "Miss Moore." "Just Cassandra is fine." He nodded, uncomfortable with the informality. Victor had always been kind to her in his own way, kinder than Dante had been, certainly. "The car's waiting." "I don't need the car. I'll take a cab." "Boss said..." "The boss doesn't give me orders anymore." She pushed past him, down the stairs, through the foyer where crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors. The front door stood between her and freedom. Just a door. Just wood and brass and a lock she could finally open. Victor's hand landed on her shoulder, gentle but firm. "Wait." She stopped. "There are people out there," he said quietly. "People who'd use you to get to him. You need protection, at least until..." "Until what? Until everyone forgets I was married to him? That'll never happen." Cassandra shrugged off his hand. "I'll take my chances." She pushed through the door into afternoon sunlight that felt like absolution. The front steps led down to a circular driveway where armed men stood at intervals, pretending not to watch her. She felt their eyes anyway, felt their judgment. The wife who couldn't hold on to Dante Rossi, the woman who wasn't enough. Let them think when they wanted. A black town car sat purring at the curb, driver already behind the wheel. She walked past it toward the gate, her low heels clicking against stone. The massive iron gates began to open as she approached. Someone inside must have been watching, always watching. That's how Dante's world worked, eyes everywhere, secrets nowhere. "Cassandra?" Dante's voice stopped her at the threshold. She didn't turn around. If you need anything, I won't. She stepped through the gate onto the public sidewalk beyond. Free territory. Goodbye, Dante. She walked 3 blocks before her legs started shaking. 4 before she found a coffee shop and ducked inside, ordering something she didn't want just for an excuse to sit down. The chair felt too soft after 3 years of Dante's uncomfortable antiques. Everything felt strange, the normal chatter of normal people living normal lives. The barista calling out drink orders. A kid crying 2 tables over while his mother tried to soothe him. Normal. She'd almost forgotten what that sounded like. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. You made it out. Impressive. She deleted the message without responding, then deleted the number, then turned off her phone entirely and sat in the coffee shop until the shaking stopped and she could breathe without feeling like her ribs were too tight. She had $847 in cash and a checking account. Dante's lawyers had assured her would receive monthly deposits per their settlement agreement, enough to start over, enough to disappear. That night, in a budget motel that smelled like industrial cleaner and cigarettes, Cassandra stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. 28 years old, dark hair that needed cutting, eyes that had seen too much, a face she barely recognized anymore. You survived, she told herself. Now you live. But living turned out to be harder than surviving. The apartment she found was a 4th-floor walk-up in a neighborhood where people minded their business and didn't ask questions. 600 square feet of water-stained ceiling and radiator heat that clanged through the night. Perfect. She got a job at a diner 2 weeks later. The owner, a woman named Ruth with gray hair and kind eyes, didn't care that Cassandra's resume had a 3-year gap. Just handed her an apron and showed her how the register worked. You running from something? Ruth asked on her first day. Cassandra's hand stilled over the order pad. What makes you say that? Honey, I've run this place for 30 years. I know the difference between down on your luck and running for your life. Ruth squeezed her shoulder. Your secrets are safe here. Just do your job and don't steal from the register. I won't. Then we'll get along fine. The work was exhausting. 8-hour shifts that turned into 10, feet aching, back screaming, smiling at customers who barely saw her. But it was honest, clean. No blood money, no dangerous men, no wondering which decision Dante had made would blow back on her. 3 months passed, then 6. Cassandra learned the rhythms of her new life. Wake at 5, work until 2, home to collapse, repeat. She learned her neighbors' schedules so she could avoid them. Learned which streets had too many cameras. Learned how to spot the difference between coincidence and surveillance. Because she was being watched. She knew it the way prey knows the predator is near. Small things at first. A black car that appeared too often on her block. A man in a coffee shop who always sat where he could see her. The feeling of eyes on her back when she walked home at night. She told herself she was paranoid, that Dante had moved on, that he didn't care, that she was free. She told herself a lot of lies in those first months. The truth came on a Tuesday in March, when she took her usual shortcut through the park on the way home. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through bare trees. She was thinking about nothing, what to eat for dinner, whether her radiator would survive another week, if she should buy new shoes. When a hand grabbed her arm and yanked her sideways into the trees, Cassandra twisted, dropping her bag, bringing her knee up the way Victor had taught her during one of their quiet sessions in Dante's gym. Her attacker grunted, loosening his grip just enough for her to wrench free. She ran, heart hammering, not looking back until, Mrs. Rossi, please. She stopped, turned. The man was young, maybe 25, with scared eyes and blood on his shirt. Not his blood. Someone else's, judging by the placement of the stain. Don't call me that, she said. I need your help. I can't help you. You're his wife, ex-wife. We're divorced. Whatever you need, go to him directly. The man shook his head, desperate. I can't. He'll kill me. But you could talk to him, make him understand. Understand what? That I didn't betray him. That Marco set me up. Please, Mrs. Rossi, I have a daughter. She's only 4. If Dante thinks I... Stop. Cassandra held up her hand. I don't know you. I don't know what you did or didn't do. And I don't have any influence with Dante anymore. Go home to your daughter. She walked away, leaving him standing in the trees. Her hands didn't start shaking until she was locked in her apartment with all 3 deadbolts thrown. That night, she dreamed of the basement room where Dante kept his enemies. Woke at 3 a.m. with her heart racing and the taste of fear in her mouth. The man's daughter was 4, the same age Cassandra had been when her own father disappeared. She didn't go back to work the next day, or the day after that. Ruth called, concerned, and Cassandra lied about a stomach bug. 3 days later, she saw on the news that a body had been found in the river. Male, mid-20s, multiple gunshot wounds. Name withheld pending family notification. She knew. Of course she knew. And she knew something else too. Dante was sending a message, not to the dead man, to her. You're still mine. You'll always be mine. That night, Cassandra started planning. Not an escape. She'd already escaped. Something bigger, something final. She was going to disappear completely. It took 2 weeks to arrange. Fake ID purchased from a guy Ruth knew who knew a guy. New phone, new number. She withdrew every cent from her checking account, closed it, opened a new one under her fake name at a different bank across town. Bought a bus ticket to a city she'd never been to, in a state where nobody knew her face. She left on a Sunday morning, before dawn, with nothing but her worn leather bag and a promise to herself that she'd never look back. The bus station was nearly empty, a few travelers slumped in plastic chairs, a security guard doing rounds, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Cassandra bought coffee from a vending machine and sat near the back, watching the door. Her bus was boarding when she saw him. Victor. He stood in the entrance, scanning the terminal with methodical precision, looking for her. Of course he was looking for her. Dante would have noticed her bank account closing, her apartment abandoned, her trail going cold. She grabbed her bag and moved toward the bathroom, keeping her head down. If Victor saw her, it was over. He'd call Dante and Dante would, what, drag her back? Lock her up? The bathroom door swung shut behind her. Cassandra locked herself in a stall and waited, counting seconds, trying to control her breathing. 5 minutes. 10. Finally, she emerged. Checked the terminal. Victor was gone. Her bus was pulling out. She ran, bag bouncing against her hip, and pounded on the door. The driver, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes, looked at her ticket and shook her head. You missed it. Please, I have to. Next bus leaves in 4 hours. 4 hours. 4 hours of sitting exposed in this terminal, hoping Victor didn't come back. Cassandra bought another ticket. Different bus, different route, same destination. Then she left the terminal entirely and spent those 4 hours in a laundromat 6 blocks away, washing clothes she'd just washed 2 days ago, watching the dryer spin, and thinking about the choice she was making. She could go back, show up at Dante's door, say she'd made a mistake, let him fold her back into his world of violence and luxury and loneliness, or she could get on that bus and become someone else, someone who wasn't Dante Rossi's ex-wife, someone who didn't wake up from nightmares about basements and blood, someone who could build a life that belonged only to her. The second bus left at noon. Cassandra was on it. She fell asleep somewhere in Pennsylvania and woke up in Ohio. The landscape outside the window was flat and gray, dotted with farms and small towns that looked like they'd been forgotten by time. Perfect. In a city called Millbrook, population 43,000, Cassandra became Sarah. Sarah Chen. The fake ID listed her as 30, Chinese-American on her mother's side, originally from California. The story was simple. Bad divorce, starting over, no family to speak of. People asked fewer questions when you gave them just enough truth to stop wondering. She found work at a veterinary clinic on the east side of town. Dr. Patricia Walsh ran the place with fierce competence and didn't care that Sarah's references were thin. She just needed someone who could handle the front desk, wasn't afraid of large dogs, and showed up on time. You know anything about animals? Dr. Walsh asked during the interview. I like them better than people, Sarah said. Dr. Walsh laughed. You'll fit in fine. The clinic was small, just Dr. Walsh and one vet tech named Jamie, who wore vintage band shirts and had a piercing in their eyebrow. They treated mostly dogs and cats, the occasional rabbit or guinea pig, once a chicken someone's kid had smuggled into the house and convinced the parents was a pet. Sarah learned fast. How to calm an anxious owner while their dog got stitches. How to hold a cat for vaccinations without getting shredded. How to talk to people who loved their animals more than anything and just needed someone to understand. She rented a studio apartment above a Vietnamese restaurant. The smell of pho and herbs seeped through the floorboards, making the whole place smell like comfort. The owner, Mr. Nguyen, occasionally left containers of food by her door. She left cash in envelopes by his. They communicated in smiles and nods in the universal language of mutual respect. Weeks turned into months. Sarah stopped looking over her shoulder quite as often, started sleeping through the night, let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd actually done it. She'd escaped. Then she found out she was pregnant. The test sat on her bathroom sink, 2 pink lines screaming the truth she didn't want to face. Sarah sank onto the edge of the tub, head in her hands, and tried to remember the last time she and Dante had 3 weeks before she left. A rare night when he'd come home early, when the weight of his empire had pressed down hard enough that he'd needed something human to hold on to. She'd let him, even though things between them were already broken. One last moment of weakness. She should have been more careful. "No," she whispered to the empty bathroom. "No, no, no." But biology didn't care about her plans. Dr. Walsh noticed 3 weeks later when Sarah started disappearing to the bathroom every hour to throw up. "Stomach bug?" she asked gently. "Something like that." "Sarah?" "Honey." Dr. Walsh's expression was knowing, kind. "I've delivered enough puppies to recognize morning sickness when I see it. Are you okay?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She wiped them away furiously. "I don't know." "Is the father involved?" "No, he can't be. He doesn't even know I'm alive." Dr. Walsh studied her for a long moment. Then she pulled Sarah into a hug that smelled like antiseptic and lavender shampoo, and Sarah broke down completely. "It's okay," Dr. Walsh murmured. "Whatever you decide, it's okay. You're not alone." But she was alone. That was the whole point. No family, no friends, no support system beyond the kindness of strangers. Just her and a child she hadn't planned for, and a secret that could destroy everything if anyone found out. Dante's child. She thought about terminating the pregnancy, made an appointment twice and canceled both times. Not because of any moral stance. She believed in choice firmly, but because every time she tried to go through with it, something stopped her. Some stubborn spark of hope that maybe this child could be different, could be hers, fully hers, untainted by Dante's world. Besides, she was already starting to show, already felt the flutter of movement that the pregnancy book said was too early, but she felt anyway. Sarah kept the baby. Elena was born on a snowy December morning, 7 pounds 4 ounces of furious life. She came out screaming, red-faced and perfect, and when the nurse placed her on Sarah's chest, everything else fell away. "Hello, little one," Sarah whispered. "I'm your mama, and I'm going to keep you safe. I promise." It was a promise that would be harder to keep than she imagined. The first 2 years were brutal. Working at the clinic while caring for an infant, barely sleeping, living on coffee and determination. Mr. Nguyen's wife started babysitting Elena during Sarah's shifts, refusing payment beyond the occasional dinner or help with their English homework for their grandson. "We take care of each other," Mrs. Nguyen said firmly. "That's how it works." Sarah learned to accept help, learned that community could be built even without blood ties, learned that Elena, with her dark eyes and serious expression, was the strongest thing she'd ever created. The child looked like Dante. It terrified her. Same sharp features, same intensity, same way of studying the world like she was cataloging threats and opportunities. At 2 years old, Elena barely spoke but watched everything with an awareness that seemed older than her years. "She's very observant," Dr. Walsh commented one day when Elena sat in the clinic office, methodically sorting colored blocks. "Takes after her father," Sarah said without thinking, then froze. Dr. Walsh's eyes sharpened. "The one who doesn't know she exists?" "Yeah." "You ever think about telling him?" "No." The answer came swift and certain. "He's dangerous. Not to me directly, but the world he lives in. I can't let her anywhere near that." "Fair enough." Dr. Walsh watched Elena stack blocks with precise, careful movements. "Just seems like she might have questions someday." "She will, and I'll answer them as honestly as I can." Sarah crouched beside her daughter. "But I'll never let her get hurt because of who her father is." Elena looked up, solemn. Mama sad? No, baby. Mama's fine. It was another lie, but this one felt necessary. Years passed in the strange way they do when you're raising a child, simultaneously endless and too fast. Elena learned to walk, to talk, to argue with surprising eloquence for a 4-year-old. She befriended every animal that came through the clinic, learned the names of dog breeds, announced she wanted to be a veterinarian like Dr. Pat. Sarah let herself relax, let herself believe they were truly safe. The first crack in that safety came on Elena's 5th birthday. They were at the park, just the two of them, eating cupcakes Sarah had made that morning. Elena was chattering about the rabbit she'd helped doctor. Walsh examined yesterday, her small face animated in a way that made Sarah's heart ache with love. Mama, Elena said suddenly, her voice dropping to a whisper. That man is watching us. Sarah's blood went cold. What man, baby? By the trees, the one in the black coat. Sarah followed her daughter's gaze. There, standing in the shadow of an oak tree, was a man. Tall, dark hair, expensive coat that looked wrong in this shabby neighborhood park. He wasn't even trying to hide, just standing there, watching them with an intensity that made Sarah's survival instincts scream. She grabbed Elena's hand. Time to go. But we didn't finish, Now, Elena. They walked quickly toward the parking lot, Sarah's keys already in her hand. She didn't run. Running would show fear, and fear drew predators. But she moved fast, scanning her surroundings, calculating escape routes. The man didn't follow. When Sarah glanced back from her car, he was gone. Who was that? Elena asked as Sarah buckled her into her car seat with shaking hands. I don't know, baby. He looked scary. I know. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. But we're okay. We're always okay. Another lie. The lies were piling up. That night, Sarah called Dr. Walsh. I need some time off, she said without preamble. Maybe a week. Family emergency. Of course. Is everything I'll explain when I get back. Maybe. She packed a bag for her and Elena, threw it in the car, and drove. No destination in mind, just away. Away from Millbrook, away from the man in the black coat, away from the feeling that her carefully constructed life was about to implode. They ended up in a motel 3 towns over. Elena fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by the unexpected adventure. Sarah sat by the window watching the parking lot and tried to think. 5 years. She'd had 5 years of peace, of building something, of being Sarah instead of Cassandra. But Cassandra Rossi couldn't hide forever. Eventually, the past caught up. It always did. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Stop running. You're only making this harder. She stared at the message until the screen went dark. Then she made a decision. Tomorrow, she'd go back. Not to Millbrook. That was compromised. But somewhere else. Another city, another name, another fresh start. She was good at disappearing now. Practice made perfect. She just had to stay one step ahead. The problem was, she didn't know who was chasing her, and that made staying ahead almost impossible. The motel room smelled like stale cigarettes and cheap air freshener. Sarah sat in the dark long after Elena fell asleep, watching headlights sweep across the ceiling every time a car passed on the highway. Each one made her tense, waiting for the engine to slow, for footsteps outside their door. None came. By dawn, she'd made a plan. Not much of one, but enough to move forward. They'd go to Portland, big enough to disappear, small enough to build a quiet life. She had enough savings for first and last month's rent, enough to survive until she found work. Elena stirred as sunlight crept through the curtains. Mama, where are we? On an adventure, baby. I don't like this adventure. I want to go home. Sarah's throat tightened. We will, soon. Just not to our old home. We're finding a new one. Why? Because the past finally caught up. Because someone found us. Because I can't keep you safe in Millbrook anymore. Because sometimes change is good, Sarah said instead. Elena's face scrunched up, unconvinced. At 5, she was already too smart to buy simple answers. Dr. Pat said change is scary. Dr. Pat's right, but that doesn't mean it's bad. They checked out an hour later, Sarah paying cash and avoiding the clerk's eyes. The car was old, a Honda she'd bought for $800 2 years ago, but it ran. That's all that mattered. Portland was 6 hours west. They stopped twice. Once for gas and bathroom breaks. Once because Elena insisted she was starving, even though she'd eaten breakfast 2 hours earlier. Sarah bought her chicken nuggets from a drive-thru and watched her daughter eat in the parking lot, sauce smeared on her chin, chattering about a cartoon she liked. Normal. So painfully normal. "Mama, you're not eating," Elena observed. "I'm not hungry." "You should eat. That's what you always tell me." Sarah managed to smile. "You're right. Here, give me a nugget." Elena handed one over solemnly. "We're sharing, like friends." The best of friends. They reached Portland just after 3. Sarah drove through neighborhoods, looking for something that felt right. Not too expensive, not too rough. Somewhere with enough foot traffic that they'd blend in, but not so much that Elena couldn't play outside. She found it in a building on the east side. A 4-story walk-up with a faded brick facade and a landlord who barely looked at her fake ID before handing over keys. The apartment was smaller than their place in Millbrook, just 1 bedroom, but it had good locks and a fire escape that led to the roof. "This is it?" Elena asked, her small face doubtful as she surveyed the empty space. "This is it. It's ugly. We'll make it beautiful." They spent that first week turning the apartment into something livable. Sarah bought furniture from thrift stores, sheets from discount chains, dishes from a dollar store. Elena helped arrange her stuffed animals on the bed, named the crack in the ceiling Mr. Lightning, and declared the bathroom echo the best part, because she could sing and hear herself louder. Sarah found work at a coffee shop 3 blocks away. The pay was worse than the clinic, but the owner didn't ask questions and let her bring Elena during slow afternoon shifts. Elena would sit at a corner table with coloring books, occasionally charming customers into giving her dollar bills for her very good artwork. "Your daughter's a hustler," the owner, Marcus, said one day. He was mid-50s, with salt and pepper hair and a dry sense of humor that reminded Sarah of Dr. Walsh. "She gets it from her father," Sarah said without thinking. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "He around?" "No, and he won't be." "Good. Men like that, the kind who leave, they're not worth the air they breathe." If only it were that simple. 3 months passed, then 6. Sarah started to relax again, started to believe they'd actually made it. Elena started kindergarten at a public school 2 blocks away, made friends with a girl named Maya who had pigtails and missing front teeth. They had play dates at the park, birthday parties with store-bought cake, the blessed mundanity of childhood. Sarah even started seeing someone. Sort of. His name was Tom, a regular at the coffee shop who always ordered black coffee and tipped well. He was a high school teacher, early 30s, with kind eyes and an easy laugh. Nothing like Dante. That was the appeal. "You seem different," he said one evening after his usual order. "Lighter." "Different from what?" "From when you first started working here. You always looked like you were waiting for something bad to happen." Sarah's smile felt tight. "Maybe I was." "And now?" "Now I'm just tired. Teaching a 5-year-old that vegetables aren't poison is exhausting." Tom laughed. "I teach 17-year-olds that studying isn't torture. I get it." They started having coffee together on her breaks. Nothing serious, just conversation. He told her about his students, the funny things they said, the frustrating things they did. She told him edited versions of her life. The veterinary clinic in California where she used to work. The amicable divorce. The decision to start fresh. He never pushed for more details. That's what she liked about him. "You want to get dinner sometime?" he asked one afternoon. "Not coffee. Actual food, actual restaurant." Sarah hesitated. Dating felt dangerous. Getting close to someone meant risking questions, risking discovery, risking everything she'd built. But Elena needed to see her mother as something other than constantly afraid. "Okay," she said. "Dinner." They went to an Italian place the following Saturday. Elena stayed with Maya's family, thrilled to have a sleepover. Sarah wore a dress she'd bought from a consignment shop and tried to remember how to be a person on a date instead of a fugitive in hiding. Tom was easy to talk to. He asked about her day, listened to her answers, made jokes that were actually funny. The food was good. The wine was better. For 3 hours, Sarah let herself pretend this was her real life. "Can I ask you something?" Tom said over dessert. Her guard snapped up. "Depends what it is." "Why Portland? You said you're from California. Why come all the way up here?" "Because I was running. Because someone found me. because I needed to disappear. Fresh start, she said. Sometimes you need to go far enough that the past can't follow. Tom studied her face. Bad divorce? The worst. He hit you? No. Dante had never laid a hand on her in anger. That wasn't his style. He destroyed people with words, with silences, with the weight of his indifference. But he was dangerous in other ways. I'm sorry. Don't be. I got Elena out of it. That makes it worth it. Tom reached across the table, his hand covering hers. You're a good mom. I can see that. Sarah pulled her hand back gently. Tom, I like you, but this can't be anything serious. I'm not ready. I know, I'm not asking for serious, just asking for more dinners, more conversations, more time. She wanted to say yes, wanted to believe that maybe, possibly, she could have this. A normal relationship with a normal man who taught high school and laughed at his own jokes and didn't have blood on his hands. Okay, she said, more time. They left the restaurant into cool evening air. Tom walked her to her car, keeping a respectful distance, not pushing for anything she wasn't ready to give. At her car door, he hesitated. Can I kiss you? Her heart hammered. I don't think that's a good idea. Okay. He smiled, not offended. Next time, maybe? Sarah drove home feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Hope, maybe, or just the absence of constant fear. Either way, it was nice. Elena came home the next morning full of stories about the sleepover. She and Maya had stayed up late watching movies, eating popcorn, building forts out of couch cushions. Normal kid things. Did you have fun with Tom? Elena asked, too perceptive for her own good. I did. Are you going to marry him? Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. What? No, we're just friends. Maya says when grown-ups go to dinner alone, it means they like each other. Maya's very wise. But no, we're not getting married. Elena looked disappointed. I think you should. Then I'd have a daddy. The words hit harder than they should have. Sarah set down her coffee carefully. You have a daddy, baby. He just doesn't live with us. Why not? Because he's a monster. Because he lives in a world of violence and power that would swallow you whole. Because I'd rather die than let him touch you. Because sometimes parents can't be together, Sarah said. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you. It was the biggest lie she'd told yet. Dante didn't even know Elena existed. And if he did, she couldn't think about that. Fall turned to winter. Christmas came, and Sarah bought Elena too many presents with money she couldn't spare. They decorated a small tree with handmade ornaments, drank hot chocolate, watched holiday movies until Elena fell asleep on the couch. Tom joined them for Christmas dinner. He brought wine for Sarah and a stuffed penguin for Elena, who immediately named it Mr. Waddles and refused to let it out of her sight. They ate roasted chicken because Sarah couldn't afford turkey, played board games Elena was too young to understand, and for one evening felt like a family. Thank you, Sarah told him later, after Elena had gone to bed, for being patient with me. You're worth being patient for. He kissed her that night, gentle and careful, and Sarah let him. Let herself feel wanted, desired, human. It had been so long since anyone had touched her with kindness instead of possession. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Dante's face. The guilt was crushing, not for moving on. She had every right to move on, but for the part of her that still remembered what his hands felt like, what his voice sounded like when he said her name in the dark. The part that knew Elena had his eyes, his intensity, his quiet observation of the world. Tom never stayed over. Sarah wouldn't allow it, using Elena as an excuse even though the real reason was more complicated. She couldn't risk someone getting that close, couldn't risk the questions that would come when he noticed how she flinched at unexpected sounds, how she always sat facing the door, how she never talked about her past in specific terms. Spring arrived. Elena turned 6. She lost her first tooth and put it under her pillow with absolute faith that the tooth fairy would come. Sarah left $2 and a note written in her worst handwriting, and Elena's joy the next morning made everything worth it. Look, Mama, the tooth fairy knows my name. Of course she does. She knows all the good children. Am I good? The best. Elena studied the note seriously. Her handwriting looks like yours. Sarah's heart skipped. Does it? Yeah, maybe the tooth fairy is someone's mama too. Maybe that's why. Maybe so. Tom proposed in June. They were at the park watching Elena play on the swings when he pulled out a small box. Not expensive, he was a teacher after all, but thoughtful. A simple silver band with a tiny stone. "I know it's fast," he said, "and I know you have your reasons for being careful. But Sarah, I love you. I love Elena. I want to build a life with you both." Sarah stared at the ring, at this man who was offering her everything she'd thought she wanted. Stability, safety, normal. "Tom, You don't have to answer now. Just think about it." But she already knew the answer, had known it the moment he opened the box. "I can't," she said softly. "I'm sorry. I can't marry you." His face fell. "Is it me?" "No, you're wonderful, but I'm not who you think I am." "Then tell me who you are. Let me in, Sarah. Let me help." "You can't help with this." She touched his hand, the ring box still open between them. "There are things in my past that won't stay buried, things that could hurt you if you got involved. I care about you too much to let that happen." "I'm not afraid of your past." "You should be." Tom closed the box slowly. "Is it Elena's father?" "Partly." "Is he coming back?" "I don't know. I hope not. But I can't promise you safety, Tom. I can't promise you anything except that being with me is dangerous." They sat in silence, watching Elena swing higher and higher, her laughter carrying across the playground. "I wish you'd let me decide what risks I'm willing to take," Tom said finally. "I can't. I'm sorry." He left the park shortly after. Sarah stayed, watching her daughter play, feeling the weight of another ending, another loss. But this one was necessary. Tom deserved better than someone who was always looking over her shoulder, always ready to run. Elena noticed the change immediately. "Where's Tom?" she asked a week later. "He's busy with work. Is he coming back?" "I don't think so, baby." Elena's face crumpled. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." Sarah pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. "You did nothing wrong. Nothing. This is about me, not you." "But I liked him. He was nice." "I know. I liked him too." "Then why—" "Sometimes liking someone isn't enough." Sarah smoothed Elena's hair. "Sometimes we have to let people go to keep them safe." It was the closest to the truth she'd ever come. Summer was brutal. Heat waves rolled through Portland, turning the apartment into an oven. The coffee shop's air conditioning barely worked. Elena was cranky and bored, missing school, missing Maya, who'd gone to visit grandparents for a month. Sarah was walking home from work one August afternoon, Elena's hand in hers when she saw the car. Black sedan, tinted windows, idling at the corner of her street. Her blood turned to ice. "Elena, we're going to walk faster now." "Why?" "Because I said so." They hurried past the car. Sarah didn't look directly at it, but she felt eyes on her back. Felt the weight of observation, of intent. At their building's entrance, she risked a glance back. The car was gone. "Mama, you're hurting my hand." Sarah loosened her grip. "Sorry, baby." That night she packed a bag. Just essentials, clothes, documents, cash. She put it in the back of her closet, ready to grab, just in case. Elena found it 3 days later. "Why do we have a running away bag?" she asked, pulling out one of her stuffed animals Sarah had packed. Sarah's mind raced for an explanation. "It's an emergency bag, in case of fire or earthquake." "Oh." Elena seemed to accept this. "Maya's family has one too, but theirs has flashlights. We should get flashlights and—" They went to the hardware store that afternoon. Sarah bought flashlights, batteries, a first aid kit, all the things a normal emergency kit would have. All the things that wouldn't help if Dante's people, or worse, his enemies, found them. Because that was the real fear, wasn't it? Not just that Dante would find her, but that his enemies would find her first. Use her and Elena as leverage, as weapons, as casualties. The black sedan appeared again 2 weeks later. Different corner, same predatory stillness. Sarah changed her route home, took side streets, doubled back to check for tails. She was being watched. She knew it. What she didn't know was by whom. Marcus noticed her distraction at work. "You okay?" he asked during a slow afternoon. "You seem jumpy." "I'm fine." That's what people say when they're not fine. Sarah forced a smile. Just stressed. Bills, you know. If you need an advance, say, I don't, but thank you. She couldn't tell him the truth, couldn't tell anyone. The isolation was crushing, but it was necessary. The moment she confided in someone, she put them at risk. Elena started having nightmares in September. She'd wake up crying, talking about shadows and scary men and her mama leaving. Sarah would hold her, rock her, promise that she'd never leave. More lies. If running meant keeping Elena safe, she'd leave in a heartbeat. There's a man at my school, Elena said one morning over breakfast. Sarah's fork clattered against her plate. What man? I don't know. He was standing by the fence yesterday, and the day before. Did he talk to you? No, he just watched. Maya said maybe he's someone's daddy, picking them up. Stay away from the fence. Always stay where your teacher can see you. Okay. Elena poked at her cereal. Mama, are we in trouble? The question was too knowing, too aware. Sarah had tried so hard to shield her daughter from fear, but children absorbed everything. They knew when their parents were scared even if they couldn't name why. No, baby, we're not in trouble. Then why do you look scared all the time? Sarah's eyes burned. I'm not scared. I'm just careful. There's a difference. What's the difference? Careful means you pay attention. Scared means you freeze, and I never freeze. It was what Victor had told her once, during one of their training sessions in Dante's gym, before everything fell apart, before she understood that careful and scared were sometimes the same thing. That afternoon, Sarah called the school. There's been a man loitering by the playground fence, she told the secretary. My daughter mentioned it. I'm concerned. We take security very seriously, Ms. Chen. I'll inform the principal and we'll increase monitoring. Thank you. But increased monitoring didn't stop the feeling of being watched, didn't stop the black sedan that appeared and disappeared like smoke, didn't stop the creeping certainty that her time was running out. She started looking at bus schedules, at cities far enough away that maybe, just maybe, they could disappear again. Boise, Albuquerque, Omaha. Places she'd never been, places with no connection to her past. But Elena loved her school, loved Maya, loved the coffee shop where Marcus let her draw on napkins, and the park, with the good swings, and the library where the children's librarian knew her name. How many times could Sarah uproot her daughter before the damage became permanent? The answer came on a Thursday in October. Sarah was closing the coffee shop, Marcus having left early for a doctor's appointment. Elena sat at her usual corner table, reading a book about dogs. The street outside was quiet, just the usual evening traffic. The bell over the door chimed. Sarah looked up, her customer service smile ready. It died on her lips. The man was tall, well-dressed, with sharp features and eyes that cataloged everything in 3 seconds. Not Dante, not Victor, someone else, someone dangerous. We're about to close, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. This won't take long. His accent was slight, European maybe. Russian? You're a hard woman to find, Mrs. Rossi. Elena looked up from her book. Sarah stepped between them, blocking his view of her daughter. I don't know what you're talking about. My name is Sarah Chen. Is that what you're calling yourself now? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Clever. The fake ID is very good. Almost fooled us. Elena, go to the back room. But now. Her daughter scrambled off the chair, clutching her book, and disappeared into the back. Sarah heard the door close. Good girl. She's beautiful, the man said. She has her father's eyes. Sarah's world tilted. You're mistaken. Am I? He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. Sarah and Elena at the park last week. We've been watching for some time, making sure. The timeline fits. Conceived just before you disappeared. Born 9 months later. Does Dante know he has a daughter? Her silence was answer enough. The man put his phone away. My employer would like to speak with you. Both of you. Your employer can go to hell. That's unwise. We're offering protection. Others have been looking for you too. Not everyone would be as courteous. But protection from whom? From those who would use you against your husband. Ex-husband. We're divorced. The man's laugh was cold. Divorce papers mean nothing to people like Dante Rossi. You were his. You'll always be his. And now you've given him an heir. Sarah's hand closed around the coffee pot behind her. Still half full, still hot. Get out. Mrs. Rossi, get out or I start screaming. There's a police station 2 blocks away. The police can't help you. Maybe not, but they can make this very public, very messy. And I don't think your employer wants that kind of attention. They stared at each other. Sarah's fingers tightened on the pot handle, ready to throw it, ready to fight, ready to do whatever it took. You have 24 hours, the man said finally. After that, my employer's patience ends. And trust me, you want his protection. The alternative is much worse. He left, the bell chiming cheerfully behind him. Sarah locked the door with shaking hands. Then she ran to the back room where Elena sat huddled under the desk, eyes wide. Mama? We're leaving, right now. But no questions. Grab your backpack. They left through the back exit, Sarah's emergency bag already in the car from this morning when her paranoia had insisted she keep it close. Elena climbed into her booster seat silently, her small face pale. Sarah drove. No destination in mind, just away. Away from the coffee shop, away from their apartment, away from Portland and the life they'd built. Where are we going? Elena asked after 20 minutes. I don't know yet. Are we coming back? Sarah looked at her daughter in the rearview mirror. 6 years old enough to understand that something was very wrong, too young to understand why her mother kept running. No, baby, we're not coming back. Elena started crying silently, tears tracking down her cheeks. Sarah's heart shattered, but she kept driving, kept moving, because stopping meant capture, and capture meant losing everything. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Running won't save her. Nothing will. We'll find you wherever you go. Sarah threw the phone out the window. They drove through the night, Elena eventually falling asleep in the back seat, her tear-stained face pressed against the window. Sarah's hands ached from gripping the steering wheel. Every pair of headlights in the rear-view mirror made her pulse spike. Every rest stop felt like a trap. Around 3 a.m, the car started making a noise, a whining sound from under the hood that got louder with each mile. Sarah cursed under her breath. She couldn't afford a breakdown. Couldn't afford to be stranded on the side of the highway in the dark. She took the next exit, found a 24-hour gas station bathed in fluorescent light. The attendant was a kid, maybe 19, with acne scars and bored eyes. You got a mechanic? Sarah asked. Not till 6. I'll wait. She parked under the lights where she could see anyone approaching. Bought coffee she didn't drink and a granola bar Elena would probably refuse to eat. Sat in the car with the doors locked, watching the highway, waiting for dawn. Elena woke up when the sun started rising, disoriented and cranky. I'm hungry. I know, baby. We'll get food soon. Where are we? Sarah checked the road signs. Somewhere in Idaho. I don't like Idaho. You've never been to Idaho. I don't like it anyway. Elena's lower lip trembled. I want to go home. We can't. Why not? Because men with dead eyes know where we live. Because your father's world finally caught up to us. Because I was stupid enough to think we could ever really escape. Because home isn't safe anymore, Sarah said. The mechanic arrived at 6:15, a woman in coveralls with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked at Sarah's car, listened to the engine, shook her head. Transmission's going. You can probably make it another 100 miles, maybe 200 if you're lucky. But after that, she made a gesture that meant death. How much to fix it? More than the car's worth. You'd be better off selling it for parts and buying something else. Sarah did the math in her head. She had maybe $3,000 in cash. Not enough for a decent car, not enough to keep running indefinitely. Can you get me to the nearest city? Boise's about 80 miles west, should make it that far. They limped into Boise just before 9. The transmission was screaming by then, the car shuddering with every gear shift. Sarah found a used car lot, talked to a salesman who looked at her vehicle with barely concealed disgust. I can give you $500 for it. It's worth more than that. Not to me, it isn't. She took the $500, bought a 15-year-old Toyota for $2,500, cleaned out most of her cash. The car ran, barely, but it would get them somewhere. Anywhere. Elena sat in a plastic chair in the dealership office, clutching Mr. Waddles, her penguin, and watching her mother negotiate with the 1,000-yard stare of a child who'd stopped asking questions. You okay, baby? Sarah asked as they got into the new car. No. At least she was honest. They found a motel on the outskirts of Boise. Sarah paid for 3 nights with her dwindling cash, carried their bags up to a room that smelled like mold and regret. Elena climbed onto the bed without being told, curled up with her penguin, and stared at the water-stained ceiling. I'm sorry, Sarah said. For what? For all of this. For dragging you around. For everything. Elena looked at her mother, really looked, the way she sometimes did that made her seem older than 6. Is it because of my daddy? Sarah's breath caught. What makes you say that? You always get scared when I ask about him. And that man at the coffee shop, he said something about my daddy. I heard him. She should have known Elena was listening. Her daughter was too smart, too observant, Dante's child through and through. Yes, Sarah said, because lying seemed pointless now. It's because of your daddy. Is he bad? No, not bad. Just dangerous. The world he lives in is dangerous, and I've been trying to keep you away from it. But we can't stay away, can we? I don't know anymore. Elena sat up, hugging her penguin tight. If we went to him, would we be safe? The question gutted Sarah, because the answer was yes and no. Yes, Dante would protect them with everything he had. No, because being near him meant drowning in violence and darkness, and all the things she'd fled 6 years ago. Maybe, Sarah said, but safe isn't the same as happy. Are we happy now? Are you? Elena considered this seriously. I was happy in Portland before the scary man came. Me too, baby. They ordered pizza that night from a place that delivered, ate it on the motel bed while watching cartoons on a television that only got 5 channels. Elena laughed at something on screen, and for a moment things felt almost normal. Sarah's new phone buzzed. She'd bought it that afternoon, a cheap prepaid that couldn't be traced. Only one person had the number, Marcus, because she'd owed him an explanation for abandoning the coffee shop. But the message wasn't from Marcus. You can't run forever. Let us help. Her blood went cold. They'd found her new number in less than 12 hours. She turned off the phone, removed the battery, threw both in the trash. Elena noticed. What's wrong? Nothing, just spam callers. Another lie. They were piling up faster than she could count. That night, Sarah lay awake while Elena slept beside her, planning. She had maybe $500 left, not enough to keep running, not enough to start over somewhere new. She needed money, needed resources, needed something she didn't have. She could call Dante. The thought made her sick, but it was there, persistent. One phone call and this would be over. He'd send Victor or someone else to collect them, bring them back into his world, give Elena everything she needed, except freedom, except a normal life, except the chance to be anything other than Dante Rossi's daughter. No, she'd find another way. Morning came too fast. Sarah checked them out of the motel, drove to a diner for breakfast. Elena picked at her pancakes, quiet in a way that worried Sarah more than crying would have. You want to talk about it? Sarah asked. About what? About how you're feeling. Elena shrugged. What's the point? We're just going to leave again anyway. The resignation in her daughter's voice broke something in Sarah. 6 years old and already learning that stability was a lie, that safety was temporary, that the people you loved would uproot your entire life without warning. I'm trying to protect you, Sarah said. I know, but Mama, I'm tired of being protected. I'm tired of running. Me too, baby. Me too. They sat in silence, the diner noise washing over them. A waitress refilled Sarah's coffee. A trucker argued with the cook about his order. Life continuing, oblivious to their crisis. Sarah's eye caught on the television mounted in the corner. Local news. She wasn't paying attention until Elena said, Mama, look. The screen showed a photo. A man's face, handsome and cold and achingly familiar even after 6 years. Dante. The news anchor was talking about a charity gala, some fundraiser for children's hospitals. Dante Rossi, prominent businessman, donating $2 million. The camera cut to footage of him shaking hands with city officials, his expression carefully neutral. He looked exactly the same, maybe a few more lines around his eyes, maybe grayer at the temples, But still Dante, still magnetic and terrifying in equal measure. "Is that him?" Elena whispered. "Is that my daddy?" Sarah couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the man she'd run from, the man who'd haunted her dreams for 6 years, now on television looking respectable and reformed. "Yes," she managed finally. "That's him." Elena studied the screen with disturbing intensity. "He doesn't look scary." "He wouldn't. That's the point." The footage ended, cutting back to the anchor discussing other news. Sarah left money on the table and got them out of the diner before Elena could ask more questions. But the damage was done. Elena had seen her father's face, would remember it, would compare herself to him and find the similarities Sarah had been trying to ignore. They drove west, no destination in mind, just moving. Through Idaho into Oregon, skirting around Portland, heading for the coast. Sarah thought maybe the ocean would help. Maybe the endless water would make her feel less trapped. They reached a small coastal town called Seabrook 3 days later. Population 8,000, mostly retirees and fishermen. Sarah rented a cabin on the edge of town, month to month, using the last of her cash. The place was drafty and small, but it had a view of the ocean and enough distance from neighbors that they wouldn't be questioned. Elena started talking to her penguin more than to Sarah. Long conversations where she'd voice both parts, asking Mr. Waddles questions and answering them herself. Sarah knew she should be worried, knew this isolation was damaging, but what choice did she have? She found work at a bait shop on the docks. The owner, an old man named Dutch, paid her under the table and didn't ask why she needed cash instead of checks. She worked mornings, came home to Elena who'd spent the day reading library books or drawing pictures of the ocean. "I enrolled you in school," Sarah told her daughter one evening in November. "You start Monday." Elena looked up from her drawing. "What if someone finds us?" "They won't." "You always say that." "Because it's true." But Elena's skeptical expression said she'd stopped believing. 6 years old and already too cynical for comfort. School helped, a little. Elena made friends with a boy named Chris who also liked books about animals. Came home with stories about her teacher, about recess, about the science project they were doing with beans and soil. Small pieces of normalcy creeping back in. Sarah let herself hope again. Let herself think that maybe this time they'd actually made it. December arrived with storms that battered the coast, rain that never seemed to stop, wind that howled through gaps in the cabin walls. Sarah bought space heaters they couldn't afford and thick blankets to pile on Elena's bed. They made hot chocolate and watched the ocean rage outside their window. "The water's angry," Elena said one evening. "It's just a storm." "No, it's angry. Like it knows something's coming." Sarah pulled her daughter close. "Nothing's coming. We're safe here." "You keep saying that, but we weren't safe in Millbrook. We weren't safe in Portland. Why would here be different?" "Because I'm desperate. Because I'm out of options. Because I need this to work." "Because I'll make it different," Sarah said. Elena didn't look convinced. Christmas was quiet. Sarah bought presents from the thrift store, books and puzzles and a stuffed whale Elena named Mrs. Splash. They decorated the cabin with paper snowflakes Elena cut out, strung popcorn for garland, pretended everything was fine. On Christmas morning, while Elena played with her new whale, Sarah found herself thinking about Dante, wondering if he celebrated holidays, wondering if he ever thought about her, wondering what he'd do if he knew about Elena. The wondering was dangerous. It made her want things she couldn't have. January brought a break in the storms, clear skies and weak winter sunlight that made everything look washed out and fragile. Elena turned 7 in February with a small party at their cabin, just her, Chris, and Chris's mother, who seemed grateful for another parent who understood what it meant to live on the margins. "Your daughter's very bright," Chris's mother said while the kids ate cake. "Advanced for her age." "She takes after her father." "Is he around?" "No, it's better that way." The woman nodded, understanding in her eyes. "I get that. My ex was, well, let's just say I know about better that way situations." They became friends, in the careful way of people who both had secrets. Sarah didn't tell her the truth, but she didn't have to lie as much either. It was almost comfortable. Spring came slowly to the coast. Elena joined the school science fair, built a project about tide pools that won 3rd place. She smiled for the first time in months when they handed her the ribbon. "You're proud of me," she said. "Always, baby. Always." Things were good for almost 3 weeks. Sarah started to believe they might actually be okay, started to plan for a future that lasted longer than the next rent payment. Then Marco found them. It happened on a Tuesday after school. Sarah was at work. Elena was supposed to be at an after-school program. But when Sarah went to pick her up, the teacher looked confused. She left an hour ago, said her uncle was picking her up. Sarah's world stopped. "What uncle?" "She doesn't have an uncle. The man showed me ID, said you'd arranged it. He knew her name, knew she was in my class." Sarah was already running. Out of the school, to her car, hands shaking so badly she could barely get the key in the ignition. She drove to the cabin, knowing it was pointless, knowing they'd be gone, but needing to check anyway. The door was open. Inside, the place had been searched. Drawers pulled out, cushions overturned, everything she owned examined and discarded. On the table sat a note written in elegant script. "We have the child. You have 24 hours to come to the address below. Come alone. Tell anyone and she dies. An address in Seattle, 4 hours north." Sarah's knees gave out. She hit the floor, the note still clutched in her hand, and for the first time since leaving Dante, she screamed, pure rage and terror and helplessness. They had Elena. Marco, it had to be Marco, Dante's oldest rival, had her daughter. She should call the police, should call Dante, should call someone. But the note was clear. Tell anyone and she dies. Sarah stood on shaking legs, packed a bag with hands that wouldn't stop trembling, got in her car and started driving north, toward Seattle, toward whatever nightmare was waiting, toward her daughter. The drive took 5 hours because she got lost twice, her brain barely functioning through the panic. She found the address just after midnight. An industrial building in a warehouse district, dark and isolated. Every instinct screamed at her to turn around, to get help, to not walk into this trap. But Elena was inside. Sarah parked 3 blocks away and approached on foot. The building's front entrance was locked, but a side door stood open. Invitation or oversight didn't matter. She went through. The interior was dark, just emergency lighting casting shadows across concrete floors and metal beams. Her footsteps echoed. Somewhere in the distance, she heard voices. She followed them down a hallway, through a door, into a large open space that might have been a loading bay once. Now it held several men with guns, a few folding chairs, and in the center, Elena. She sat in a chair, hands bound, her small face pale but defiant. When she saw Sarah, her eyes widened. "Mama!" "I'm here, baby. I'm here." A man stepped out of the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and a smile that made Sarah's skin crawl. Marco. She'd never met him, but she'd heard enough descriptions from Dante's men, the rival who'd been trying to take down Dante's empire for years. "Mrs. Rossi? Finally!" His accent was thick, Italian. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't come." "Let her go. Your problem's with me, not her." "My problem is with Dante. You're just the leverage I needed." Marco walked closer, studying her like a specimen. 6 years you've been hiding. 6 years he's been looking. Did you know that? He never stopped searching for you. I don't care. Let my daughter go." "Your daughter?" Marco's laugh was cruel. "Does she know who her father is? Does she know what kind of monster made her?" "Don't talk about him like that," Elena said suddenly, her small voice fierce. "My daddy isn't a monster." Marco turned to her, surprised. "You defend a man you've never met? My mama says he's dangerous, not bad. There's a difference." The words, her own words thrown back at her, made Sarah's throat tight. She moved toward Elena, but one of Marco's men grabbed her arm. "Not yet," Marco said. "First we make a call." He pulled out a phone, dialed a number, put it on speaker. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Who is this?" "Dante." Even after 6 years, the sound of his voice made everything in Sarah stop. "It's Marco. I have something that belongs to you." Silence. Then, cold and lethal. "If you've hurt Victor, not Victor, something better." Marco gestured, and one of his men grabbed Elena by the hair, yanking her head back. She cried out. Sarah lunged, but the man holding her tightened his grip. "Stop!" she screamed. "Don't hurt her!" Another silence on the phone. Longer this time. When Dante spoke again, his voice was different, strained. Cassandra? Hearing her real name after 6 years felt like a blow. Let her go, Marco, please. Who's her? Dante asked. Who else is there? Marco smiled. Why don't you ask your wife? Sorry, ex-wife. She has something to tell you. Sarah's mind raced. She could lie, could protect Elena from this revelation. But what was the point? Marco would tell him anyway. Dante, she said, her voice breaking. I'm sorry. I should have told you. I should have told me what? Her name is Elena. She's 6 years old. She has your eyes. The silence stretched so long Sarah thought the call had dropped. Then, barely audible. My daughter? Yes. You kept my daughter from me for 6 years? The pain in his voice was acid. Sarah closed her eyes. I was protecting her. From me? From your world. Another pause. When Dante spoke again, the pain was gone, replaced by something colder, harder. Marco, what do you want? You. In exchange for them, come alone to the address I'm sending. You have 2 hours. If you touch either of them, 2 hours, Dante, or I start sending pieces. Marco hung up, looked at Sarah with something like pity. He'll come. He always does when family's involved, even family he didn't know he had. They tied Sarah to a chair next to Elena, close enough to touch, to whisper reassurance, to pretend she had any control over this situation. I'm scared, Elena whispered. I know, baby, but your daddy's coming. Will he be mad at me? At you, never. At me, yes, but not at you. What's going to happen? Sarah wished she knew, wished she could promise everything would be fine. But Dante was walking into a trap, and Marco had enough men and guns to make this end very badly. Your daddy's very strong, Sarah said instead, and very smart. He'll figure this out. You love him, Elena said suddenly. I can tell. Baby, it's complicated. Do you? Did she? After everything, after 6 years of running and hiding and trying to forget? Yes, Sarah admitted. I do. I just love you more. They waited. Sarah counted the minutes, watched Marco's men position themselves around the space, checked exits she couldn't reach, planned escapes that wouldn't work, thought about all the choices that had led here. She should have stayed with Dante, should have trusted him to protect them, should have told him about Elena from the start. But she'd been so sure his world would destroy them, so sure that leaving was the only way to survive. Maybe she'd been wrong. 90 minutes after the call, headlights swept across the warehouse windows. A car door slammed, footsteps approaching. Dante walked in alone. He looked different than on television. Harder, thinner, older in ways that had nothing to do with years. His eyes swept the room, cataloging threats, before landing on Sarah. Then on Elena. He stopped walking, just stood there, staring at the small girl who had his face, his eyes, his serious expression. Hello, Daddy, Elena said, because apparently fear made her brave. Something cracked in Dante's expression, something that looked almost like grief. Hello, Elena. Marco stepped forward, gun drawn. Touching, really. Now, on your knees, Dante, hands behind your head. Dante complied slowly, never taking his eyes off Elena. Let them go. This is between us. See, that's where you're wrong. This stopped being between us the moment you took everything from me. My territory, my men, my reputation. Now I take everything from you. I'll give you whatever you want. Money, territory, my entire operation. Just let them leave. No, I don't think so. I think I'll make you watch while I... Marco, please, Sarah interrupted. She's 6 years old. She's innocent in all of this. No one connected to Dante Rossi is innocent. Elena looked at her father. Are you bad? Yes, Dante said without hesitation. I'm very bad. But you love us? His jaw tightened. I didn't know about you. If I had... Would you have loved us? Yes, more than anything. Marco laughed. How sweet. A family reunion. Should I leave you alone to bond? One of his men whispered something. Marco's expression changed, became annoyed. We have company. Dante, you said you came alone. I did. Then who? The lights went out. Gunfire erupted in the darkness, muzzle flashes lighting the space in strobes. Sarah threw herself sideways, chair and all, covering Elena as best she could. Heard shouting, running, more shots. The emergency lights flickered on. Bodies on the ground. Marco's men, mostly. And standing in the doorway, Victor. He wasn't alone. A dozen men in tactical gear swept the room, weapons raised. Marco was on the ground, bleeding from his shoulder, screaming orders no one followed. Victor cut Sarah's bonds first, then Elena's. Are you hurt? No, we're okay. Dante was already there, pulling Elena into his arms with a desperation that made Sarah's eyes burn. The child went stiff for a moment, then relaxed, wrapping her small arms around her father's neck. You came, Elena whispered. Of course I came. Sarah watched Dante hold their daughter, his face buried in Elena's hair, and felt 6 years of carefully constructed walls crumble. She'd imagined this moment countless times, Dante finding out about Elena, his rage, his accusations, his demand for custody. She'd never imagined this. The raw vulnerability in his expression, the way his hands shook as he touched Elena's face like she might disappear. Victor cleared his throat. We should move. More of Marco's people could be coming. Dante nodded but didn't let go of Elena. Can you walk? Yes, Elena said. Are you really my daddy? Yes. Mama said you were dangerous. Your mama was right. But you saved us. I'll always save you, both of you. He looked at Sarah then, and the weight of that gaze nearly crushed her. Not anger, not yet. Just questions she didn't know how to answer. Victor's men were already moving Marco and his injured men out. Sarah didn't ask what would happen to them. She didn't want to know. They left the warehouse in a convoy of black SUVs. Dante sat in the back with Elena on his lap. Sarah pressed against the opposite door. Elena chattered nervously, filling the silence with observations about the car, the lights outside, anything to avoid the tension suffocating the air. Where are we going? Sarah asked finally. Safe house. Then we'll figure out next steps. Dante's voice was carefully neutral, professional, like they were discussing a business arrangement instead of their daughter's life. I need to get our things from Seabrook. Already done. Victor sent people hours ago. You've been tracking us. For 6 years. He said it matter-of-factly, like surveillance was normal. Maybe in his world it was. We lost you twice. After Portland, you got better at hiding. Elena looked up at him. You were looking for Mama? Every single day. Why? Because she's mine. Because I made mistakes and I needed to fix them. Sarah's throat tightened. Dante, not now. Not in front of her. They rode in silence after that. Elena eventually fell asleep against Dante's chest, exhausted by terror and adrenaline crash. He held her carefully, one hand on her back, watching her breathe like he was memorizing the rhythm. The safe house was outside Seattle, hidden behind gates and walls, and enough security to make Sarah's skin crawl. Victor led them inside to a space that looked more like a luxury hotel than a hideout. Clean lines, expensive furniture, abstract art on walls. Guest rooms are upstairs, Victor said. You need anything, just ask. Dante carried Elena up, Sarah following. He laid their daughter on a bed in a room decorated in soft blues and grays, pulled a blanket over her small form, stood there watching her sleep. She looks like you, Sarah whispered. She has your mouth, your stubbornness. Dante, don't. He turned to face her, and now the anger was there, controlled, contained, but burning underneath. Not here. Not while she can hear. They left Elena sleeping, Victor positioned outside her door like a sentinel. Dante led Sarah to another room down the hall, closed the door, and the careful control shattered. 6 years, Cassandra. 6 years you kept my daughter from me. I was protecting her. From me? His voice rose. From her own father? From this! Sarah gestured wildly. From men with guns, from warehouses and threats and everything that comes with your life. She deserved better. She deserved a father. She deserved safety. They stared at each other, breathing hard. Dante ran his hand through his hair, a gesture Sarah remembered from arguments past. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, but no less furious. You don't get to make that choice alone. She's my child too. You didn't want children. We talked about it when we were married. You said bringing a child into your world would be cruel. That was before. He stopped. Things changed. What things? Me. I changed. Dante sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. After you left, I started restructuring the business, moving away from the worst of it. I'm not clean, I'll never be clean, but I'm better than I was. Better doesn't mean safe. And running for 6 years was safe? Moving every few months, looking over your shoulder, living in fear? He looked at her. Marco found you. If I could track you, others could too. You weren't protecting her, Cassandra. You were just delaying the inevitable. The words hit harder because they were true. Sarah sank into a chair. I did the best I could. I know. Some of the anger drained from his voice. I know you did, but it wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. They sat in silence. Sarah studied him in the lamplight, cataloging changes, a scar on his temple that hadn't been there before. More gray at his temples, lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. You really looked for me every day? She asked. Every single day. Victor thought I was losing my mind. Maybe I was. But I couldn't. He stopped. When you left, you took something I didn't know I needed. And now I find out you took even more than I realized. I'm sorry for not telling you about Elena. You deserve to know. Yes, I did. But I'm not sorry for leaving. That marriage was killing me, Dante. You were never there. You chose everything else over us, over me. I know. He met her eyes. I was building an empire and losing everything that mattered. By the time I realized it, you were gone. Would you have changed? If I'd stayed, if I told you I was pregnant, would you have actually changed? Dante was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But I would have tried. It wasn't the answer she wanted, but it was honest. Sarah could respect that. What happens now? She asked. Now you stay here, both of you, under protection until we're sure Marco's entire network is dismantled. And then? Then we figure out how to be parents, together. I'm not coming back to you, Dante. If that's what you're thinking, I'm not asking you to. He stood. But Elena deserves both her parents. We'll find a way to make that work. He left her sitting there, processing everything. Sarah wanted to cry but couldn't seem to find the tears. She was too wrung out, too empty. She checked on Elena, found her still sleeping with Victor keeping watch. Back in her own assigned room, she tried to sleep and failed. Lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about the warehouse, about Dante's face when he saw Elena for the first time, about the mess she'd made of everything. Morning came gray and drizzly. Sarah found Elena already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with Dante. He was making pancakes, moving around the kitchen with surprising competence. Mama, Elena brightened. Daddy makes funny-shaped pancakes. Look, this one's a cat. Sarah looked at the misshapen blob on Elena's plate. That's definitely a cat. Dante's mouth twitched. My artistic skills are limited. I can see that. They ate breakfast in strange domesticity. Elena asked Dante questions between bites. Where he lived, what his favorite color was, if he liked dogs. He answered patiently, watching their daughter with an intensity that made Sarah uncomfortable. After breakfast, Victor appeared. We need to talk. About Marco. Dante glanced at Elena. Can you show Elena the library? She likes books. Victor nodded. Come on, small boss. Let me show you something. Elena took his offered hand trustingly, and they disappeared down a hallway. Dante waited until they were out of earshot. Marco's not talking yet, but his men are. Turns out he's been planning this for months. Had people watching you in Portland, in Seabrook, just waiting for the right moment. Sarah felt sick. How did he know about Elena? Someone in my organization sold information. We're still finding out who. A traitor. Yes. Dante's expression went cold. They'll be dealt with. Sarah didn't ask how. She knew. What about Marco? She asked instead. He'll disappear. Quietly. His organization will fracture without him. Some might come after us for revenge, but we'll handle it. The casual way he discussed violence made Sarah's stomach turn. This was the world she'd fled. This was what she'd been protecting Elena from. "I can't stay here," she said. "Living like this, surrounded by guards and guns, and you don't have a choice. Not until this is resolved." "There's always a choice." "Fine, then choose Elena's safety over your discomfort." The words stung because they were fair. Sarah looked away. "How long?" "Few weeks, maybe a month. And then?" "Then we figure out custody arrangements, visitation schedules, all the normal divorced parent things." "We were never normal." "No," Dante agreed. "We weren't." Victor returned with Elena, who was carrying a book about marine biology. "Daddy, did you know octopuses have 3 hearts?" "I didn't." "It's true. Victor showed me. Can we go to an aquarium?" Dante looked at Sarah. She nodded slightly. "Sure, baby. Once things settle down, we'll go." "Promise?" "Promise." The days that followed fell into a strange rhythm. Mornings with Elena, trying to maintain normalcy while trapped in a fortress. Afternoons where Dante would appear, spending time with his daughter with the dedication of someone making up for lost years. Evenings where Sarah would watch them together and feel her careful plans crumbling. Elena adored Dante. It happened faster than Sarah expected, her daughter gravitating toward him with an ease that hurt. They'd read together, play chess, Dante teaching Elena the basics, talk about everything and nothing. "She's so smart," Dante said one evening after Elena had gone to bed. "Advanced for her age. She gets it from you. And stubborn like you." "Lucky her." They were sitting in the library, nursing glasses of wine, civil, almost friendly. It was disorienting. "Can I ask you something?" Dante said. "Depends what it is. Were you happy these past 6 years before Marco found you?" Sarah considered the question. "Sometimes. There were good moments, Elena's first steps, her first words, watching her make friends, but I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop. So, no, not really happy, just surviving." "I'm sorry." "For what?" "For being the kind of man you had to run from." The apology surprised her. Dante didn't apologize. Not for business decisions, not for who he was. "You're different," she observed, "from before." Prison has a way of clarifying priorities. Sarah nearly dropped her glass. "Prison?" 18 months. Federal racketeering charges. Got out 2 years ago. He said it casually, like discussing the weather. "That's when I really started restructuring. Decided I didn't want to die in a cell or from a bullet in some warehouse. Wanted something more." "What changed your mind? About children? About wanting more?" Dante was quiet. Then, "You left because I couldn't give you what you needed. After prison, after nearly losing everything, I realized you were right. The empire isn't worth anything if you're alone at the top." "So you wanted me back?" "Yes, but not like before. I wanted to be better, be someone worth coming back to." He looked at her. "Then I find out you've been raising my daughter alone for 6 years. That I missed everything, her first words, first steps, first day of school. I can't get that back." The pain in his voice was raw. Sarah's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing." "You were protecting her. I understand that. I hate it, but I understand." They sat in silence. Outside, rain drummed against windows, safe house sounds, guards changing shifts, the hum of security systems, Victor's voice somewhere giving orders. "What do you want, Dante?" Sarah asked. "Long term. Be honest." "I want to be Elena's father, really be her father, not just a name on a birth certificate. I want her to know me, trust me, come to me when she's scared or happy or needs help." "And me?" He looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "I want you to be happy, even if it's not with me." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give right now." He stood. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we're moving to a different location. Marco's people are making noise." He left her there with more questions than answers. The new location was worse, more isolated, more security, more reminders that they were in danger. Elena handled it better than Sarah did, adapting with the resilience of children. She made friends with the guards, learned their names, helped them with card games during downtime. "She's going to be formidable," Victor observed one afternoon, watching Elena negotiate extra dessert with one of his men. She already is, Sarah said. She has Dante's tactical mind. And your heart. Dangerous combination. Is that what you think I am? Dangerous? Victor smiled. You brought Dante Rossi to his knees. Most men with armies couldn't do that. So yes, you're dangerous. 2 weeks into their stay at the second safe house, Dante announced Marco was dead. Heart attack, he said over dinner, with Elena present. Very sudden, very convenient. Elena looked between her parents. The bad man is gone. Yes, baby. Good. Does that mean we can go home? Sarah and Dante exchanged glances. Home. Where was home anymore? We need to talk about that, Dante said carefully. About where you'll live, who you'll live with. Elena's face scrunched up. I want to live with both of you. That's not... Sarah started. Why not? Elena demanded. Other kids have moms and dads who live together. Why can't we? Because your mama and I aren't married anymore. So get married again. It's not that simple. It is that simple. You love each other, right? Silence. Sarah stared at her plate. Dante cleared his throat. Elena, relationships are complicated. Do you love Mama? Elena pressed. Yes, Dante said without hesitation. I never stopped. Elena turned to Sarah. Do you love Daddy? Sarah wanted to lie, wanted to protect herself, protect the boundaries she'd built. But Elena's eyes were too knowing, too hopeful. Yes, she whispered. But love isn't always enough. That's stupid, Elena announced. If you love each other and you both love me, then we should be together. That's how families work. She got up from the table and stomped to her room, leaving 2 adults stunned in her wake. She's 7, Sarah said finally. How is she this articulate about relationships? She reads too much. Dante rubbed his face. She's not wrong, though. About what? About us. About family. He looked at Sarah. I know you don't want to be with me. I know I destroyed what we had, but maybe we could try again. Differently this time. Sarah's heart hammered. Dante, I'm not asking you to move back in tomorrow. Not asking you to forgive everything. Just asking you to consider the possibility that people can change. That I've changed. Have you really? Or have you just gotten better at hiding the darkness? Both, probably. He was honest, at least. I'll never be completely clean. My past won't disappear, but I'm trying to build something different, something Elena could be proud of. What does that mean? Legitimate businesses, charities, foundations that actually help people instead of laundering money. It's slow and it's complicated, but I'm working on it. Sarah studied him, trying to see past her assumptions, past her fear. Why? Because I don't want my daughter to grow up ashamed of her father. Because I want to be someone she can look up to. He paused. Because I want to be someone you could love again. The confession hung between them. Sarah didn't know what to say. 6 years of running, 6 years of building walls, and here he was trying to tear them all down. I need time, she said, to think, to figure out what I want. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. That night, Sarah lay awake thinking about Dante, about Elena, about the future she'd imagined versus the one unfolding. She'd wanted safety, normalcy, a life free from violence. But maybe that had always been a fantasy. Maybe some people carried danger with them no matter where they went. The question was whether she could live with that. Morning brought Victor with news. Marco's organization is dissolving. Most of his territory has been absorbed by other families. The threat level is dropping. Meaning? Sarah asked. Meaning you're safe to leave if you want. Go back to your life in Seabrook or anywhere else. Freedom. After weeks of captivity, she could leave. Take Elena, disappear again, build a new life somewhere Dante couldn't find them. Except he'd always find them, and Elena would never forgive her for taking her away from her father again. I need to talk to Dante, Sarah said. She found him in his office, reviewing documents. He looked up when she entered, closing the folder. Victor told you. Yes. So what do you want to do? Sarah took a breath. I want to try. Not marriage, not yet, maybe not ever. But I want to try co-parenting, properly. With you in Elena's life. Relief flooded his expression. Okay, how do we do this? I don't know. I've never done this before. Neither have I. We'll figure it out together. They started small. Dante found them an apartment in the city, close to his house, but separate. Their own space. He paid for it, which Sarah tried to argue about until he pointed out he'd missed 6 years of child support. Elena started at a new school, one with actual security and background checks. Made friends with kids whose parents were wealthy and connected and used to discretion. Thrived in ways Sarah hadn't expected. Dante visited 3 times a week. Picked Elena up from school on Wednesdays, had her for dinner on Fridays, took her on outings on Saturdays. They established routines, boundaries, rules. It was strange, domestic, almost normal. Sarah went back to school, taking online classes in veterinary medicine, something she'd always wanted but never had time or money for. Dante offered to pay tuition, and this time she let him. Pride was expensive, and she was tired of being proud. 3 months into their new arrangement, Dante invited them to a charity gala. For the Children's Hospital Foundation, he explained. I'm on the board now. Thought you might want to come. You're on a hospital board? Don't sound so surprised. I can be philanthropic. Sarah almost said no. Galas meant fancy dresses and society people, and all the things she'd hated about being married to Dante. But Elena's excitement changed her mind. Can I wear a pretty dress? Elena asked. The prettiest, Dante promised. The gala was exactly what Sarah expected. Wealthy people in expensive clothes, making small talk and writing large checks. But Dante was different here. Charming without being calculating. Genuinely interested in the hospital's work. Introducing Elena to doctors and administrators who treated her like a person instead of a prop. You're good at this, Sarah observed during a quiet moment. What? The charity circuit. The legitimate businessman thing. You seem almost happy. I am happy. He looked at her. I have my daughter. I have you back in my life, even if not the way I want. And I'm building something that might actually matter. Yeah, I'm happy. The way you want? Sarah raised an eyebrow. And how's that? You know how. They were interrupted by Elena tugging on Dante's sleeve. Daddy, the lady wants to know if I'm your daughter. What should I say? Tell her yes. You're my daughter, and I'm very proud of you. Elena beamed and ran back to the conversation she'd been having. Sarah watched her go. She's incredible, Dante said quietly. Yes, she is. Thank you. For raising her, for keeping her safe, for doing it all alone when I should have been there. Sarah's throat tightened. You're here now. That's what matters. He took her hand just for a moment. A brief squeeze that said everything words couldn't. Then he let go and went back to schmoozing donors, leaving Sarah standing there with her heart pounding. She was in trouble, big trouble, because despite everything, despite 6 years of running and hiding and building walls, she was falling in love with Dante Rossi all over again. The realization terrified her. That night after the gala, Sarah couldn't sleep. She sat by her window watching the city lights, thinking about Dante's hand in hers, about the way he'd looked at Elena with such pride, about the terrifying realization that she wanted this. Wanted him. Wanted the family they could be. But wanting something didn't make it safe, didn't erase the past or guarantee the future. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dante. You looked beautiful tonight. She stared at the message for a long time before responding. Stop. Stop what? You know what? We agreed to co-parent. Nothing more. I never agreed to that. You decided it. I'm just waiting for you to change your mind. Sarah's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She should tell him to back off, remind him of boundaries, protect herself. Instead, she typed, what if I never do? Then I'll wait anyway. I'm patient when it matters. She turned off her phone and went to check on Elena. Found her daughter sleeping peacefully, one arm around Mr. Waddles, her face relaxed in a way it hadn't been during those years of running. Happy. Safe. Home. Maybe that was enough. Maybe Sarah didn't need to have all the answers right now. The next morning, Victor showed up at her apartment with a thick envelope. From Dante, he said. He wanted you to have this. Inside were legal documents. Sarah's stomach dropped, expecting custody papers, expecting a fight. Instead, she found property deeds. The apartment she was living in transferred to her name. a trust fund for Elena's education, and a letter in Dante's handwriting. Cassandra, these are yours regardless of what happens between us. You need security, independence. I should have given you that when we were married. I'm trying to do better now. No strings attached. I promise. D. Sarah sat down hard, the papers scattered across her coffee table. Victor cleared his throat. He means it. The no strings part. How do you know? Because I've known him 15 years, and I've never seen him like this. Trying this hard to do right by someone. He went to prison, Victor. He's not some reformed saint. No, he's not, but he's trying. That counts for something. After Victor left, Sarah called Dante. You can't just give me property, she said without preamble. I can do whatever I want with my assets. That's not the point. What's the point, Cassandra? That you don't want to accept help? That you need to do everything alone? You've been doing that for 6 years. Let someone help you for once. This isn't help. This is control. It's security. His voice was firm. Elena needs stability. You need to finish school without worrying about rent. This gives you both that. If you want to see it as control, fine. But it's also just practical. Sarah wanted to argue, but the truth was he was right. The constant financial stress had been crushing. This eased that pressure. Thank you, she said finally. I don't like it, but thank you. You're welcome. Now stop overthinking and just accept something good. She almost told him she loved him. The words were right there, pressing against her teeth, but she swallowed them back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Some things were too dangerous to say out loud. Winter settled over the city. Elena turned 8 with a birthday party that included her school friends, Victor and his team, and Dante, who showed up with a puppy. You didn't, Sarah said, watching Elena squeal and cuddle the small golden retriever. I did. Every kid needs a dog. We live in an apartment. I know. That's why I also bought the unit next door and knocked through the wall. More space. Sarah stared at him. You bought another apartment? You needed more room. Elena needed space for a dog. Problem solved. You can't just... His name is Charlie, Elena announced, the puppy licking her face. And I love him forever and ever. Sarah looked at her daughter's joy, at Dante's pleased expression, and gave up. Fine, but you're paying for training. Obviously. They were a strange family, fractured and reassembling in new configurations. Sarah finished her first semester of vet school with high marks. Dante continued his transition to legitimate business, though Sarah knew he still had connections to his old life. Some things couldn't be completely severed. Elena thrived, confident, curious, equally comfortable in Sarah's modest world and Dante's privileged one. She started showing an interest in business, asking Dante questions about how companies worked, how deals were made, how to read people. She's going to run an empire someday, Dante said one evening, watching Elena practice her chess moves. Not a criminal one, Sarah said firmly. No, something better, something that actually helps people. You really believe that? That she can be better than we were? She already is. She has you to teach her kindness and me to teach her strategy. That's a powerful combination. Spring brought unexpected news. One of Dante's legitimate ventures, a tech startup he'd invested in, went public, making him substantially wealthier. He celebrated by creating a foundation in Elena's name, focused on helping children in poverty access education and healthcare. You're really doing this, Sarah said, looking at the foundation paperwork. Building something good. I told you I was trying. He glanced at her. Do you believe me now? I'm starting to. They were sitting in his study, Elena asleep upstairs after a weekend visit, alone together, which was becoming more frequent and more dangerous to Sarah's resolve. Can I ask you something? Dante said. Depends what it is. If I'd been this person when we were married, the one I'm trying to be now, would you have stayed? Sarah considered the question honestly. I don't know, maybe, but you weren't that person, and I can't rewrite history. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking if there's a future where you could trust me again. Dante, I know I don't deserve it. I know I destroyed what we had. But people change, Cassandra. I've changed. And I'm asking, just asking, if there's any chance you could see me differently. Sarah's heart pounded. What are you really asking? I'm asking if you consider trying again. Us. Not like before, something new. We have Elena to think about. If we try and fail, then we handle it like adults. We don't let it affect her. But if we don't try, we'll always wonder what if. He was right. The wondering was already eating at her, keeping her awake at night, making her heart race every time he smiled at her. I'm scared, she admitted. Me too. But I'm more scared of living without you. Sarah looked at this man who'd been her husband, her nightmare, her obsession, her co-parent, who'd changed in ways she was still discovering, who loved their daughter with a fierceness that matched her own. Okay, she whispered, we can try, slowly. The relief on his face was profound. He reached for her hand, and this time she let him hold it. Slowly, he agreed. I can do slow. They started dating, which felt absurd given they had a child together and a history that spanned over a decade. But they did it anyway. Dinners without Elena. Movies. Long walks through the city. Conversations about everything and nothing. It was strange learning each other again. Dante was more patient now, more present. He listened when Sarah talked about her classes, asked questions about her goals, supported her ambitions without trying to control them. Sarah saw glimpses of the man she'd fallen for years ago, before empire building had consumed him. The man who could be funny and thoughtful and surprisingly gentle. But she also saw his edges, the coldness that appeared when business matters came up. The way he still gave orders and expected them followed. The darkness that would probably never fully leave him. I'm not perfect, he said one night over dinner. I'm never going to be perfect. I don't need perfect. I need honest. Then honestly? There are parts of my old life I can't completely leave behind. People I owe debts to, both literal and figurative. I'm managing it, transitioning out slowly, but it's going to take years. Will it ever be fully clean? Probably not. The best I can offer is cleaner. Is that enough? Sarah thought about it. About compromise, about accepting people as they were rather than who you wanted them to be. About the reality that some stains never fully washed out. As long as you keep Elena out of it, as long as she's protected, always, that's non-negotiable. Then yes, it's enough. They were honest with each other in ways they'd never been during their marriage. About fears, about needs, about boundaries. It wasn't easy. They fought sometimes, old patterns resurfacing, but they worked through it instead of walking away. Elena noticed the change between them. Are you and Daddy boyfriend and girlfriend? She asked one morning over breakfast. Sarah nearly choked on her coffee. What makes you ask that? He looks at you the way Chris's dad looks at his mom, and you smile different when he's around. We're figuring things out, baby. Good. I like it when you're happy. Elena returned to her cereal, then added casually, if you get married again, can I be the flower girl? We're not getting married. Yet, Elena said with the confidence of a child who saw the future more clearly than the adults. Summer arrived. They took Elena to the aquarium like they'd promised months ago, watched her press her face against glass tanks, mesmerized by octopuses and jellyfish and sharks. Dante bought her every souvenir she wanted, and Sarah let him because picking battles was part of co-parenting. They had a picnic in the park afterward. Normal, domestic, perfect. Elena ran around with Charlie while Sarah and Dante sat on a blanket watching their daughter play. I could get used to this, Dante said. Don't get too comfortable. She starts soccer next month. You're coming to games. Wouldn't miss them. He meant it. Showed up to every practice, every game, cheering louder than any other parent. Elena loved it, performed better when she knew he was watching. One night after Elena's soccer game, Victor pulled Sarah aside. You're good for him, he said abruptly. What? Dante. You make him better, more human. Before you came back, he was effective but empty. Now he has purpose beyond just surviving. Victor, I'm not asking you to stay with him. That's your choice. Just wanted you to know what I see. What we all see. It was the most Victor had ever said to her about personal matters. Sarah didn't know how to respond, so she just nodded. That fall, Elena started 4th grade. Sarah finished her 2nd year of vet school. Dante's foundation opened its first community center in an underprivileged neighborhood. They were building something, all 3 of them, separately and together. Sarah moved some of her things into Dante's house. Not all of them, not yet, but enough that she had a drawer in his bedroom and space for her textbooks in his study. Elena had her own room there, decorated exactly how she wanted. Walls covered in marine life posters, shelves full of books, Charlie's bed in the corner. It felt like home in a way the mansion never had before. Maybe because this time Sarah was choosing it instead of being trapped in it. They were in Dante's study one evening, Sarah studying while Dante worked, when he said quietly, "Marry me again." Sarah's head snapped up. "What?" "Marry me. Properly this time. Not for appearance or alliance or any of the reasons we did it before. Because I love you and I want to spend my life with you." "Dante." He pulled a ring from his desk drawer, simple, elegant, nothing like the ostentatious diamond he'd given her the first time. "I've been carrying this for 3 months, waiting for the right moment. But I realize there's never going to be a perfect moment. So I'm just asking, will you marry me?" Sarah looked at the ring, at his face, at the life they'd built from the wreckage of what came before. She thought about trust and risk and second chances, about the man he was trying to be versus the man he'd been, about Elena, watching them, learning from them. "Yes," she said, and watched joy transform his expression. "But we're doing it differently this time. Small wedding, just family and close friends. No business associates, no networking, no using it for your image. Whatever you want. And we go to counseling, real counseling, with someone who specializes in relationships recovering from trauma." "Agreed. And if you ever choose business over family again, I'm gone. No second chances after this second chance." "Understood." He slipped the ring on her finger. "Anything else?" "Just be present. Be here. That's all I've ever wanted." "I can do that." He kissed her, and it felt like coming home and starting over all at the same time. They told Elena the next morning. She screamed, jumped up and down, and immediately started planning the wedding. "I want a blue dress," she announced, "and Charlie should be there. And we need flowers, lots of flowers. Oh, and—" "Baby, slow down," Sarah laughed. "Can't slow down. We have a wedding to plan." They got married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the house. Just Victor and a few of Dante's trusted people, Dr. Walsh, who flew in from Millbrook, Marcus from the coffee shop, Chris and his mother, Elena's teacher. People who mattered. Elena was the flower girl in a blue dress, scattering petals with serious concentration. Charlie wore a bow tie and only barked twice during the vows. Sarah wore simple white, nothing elaborate, nothing that felt like armor. When Dante slipped a second wedding band on her finger, matching the engagement ring, she felt the difference from last time. This wasn't about ownership, it was about partnership. "I promise to be better," Dante said, his vows unrehearsed and raw. "To choose you, to choose Elena, to choose the life we're building together. I can't promise perfect, but I can promise present." Sarah's vows were simpler. "I promise to stay, to trust, to let you be part of this family we created, and to keep choosing you every day, even when it's hard." They kissed, and Elena cheered, and for the first time in nearly a decade, Sarah felt like she could breathe fully. The years that followed weren't perfect. They fought sometimes, old triggers resurfacing. Dante occasionally slipped into old patterns of control, and Sarah had to remind him she wasn't the woman she'd been. They went to counseling religiously, worked through issues instead of letting them fester. But they were happy, genuinely happy in a way neither of them had expected to be. Elena grew into a formidable teenager, smart, strategic, compassionate in ways that came from watching her mother, and ruthless in ways that came from her father. She started interning at Dante's Foundation at 15, learning the business of helping people. "I want to expand into global education initiatives," she announced at dinner one night. "There are millions of kids without access to basic schooling. We could change that." Dante listened to her proposal, complete with financial projections and implementation timeline, and smiled. "When do we start?" "Next quarter. I've already drafted the preliminary plans." Sarah watched them work together, her daughter and her husband, building something that mattered. This was the life she'd wanted, not perfect, not without complications, but real and solid and good. Victor retired at 60, handing over security operations to someone younger. He moved to a cabin in Montana and took up fishing, calling occasionally to check on his people. "You did good, boss," he told Dante during one call. "Built something worth protecting. We all did. Dante's legitimate business ventures flourished. By the time Elena graduated high school as valedictorian, the Rossi name meant philanthropy and innovation instead of violence and fear. The old empire had been transformed into something new. Elena went to Stanford, double majoring in business and international relations. Came home for holidays with plans to revolutionize charitable giving, to create sustainable solutions to poverty, to change the world. She's going to be president someday, Sarah said, watching their daughter present at a foundation board meeting during winter break. Of what? The country or the world? Dante asked. Both, probably. They were older now. Sarah finished vet school and opened a clinic in their neighborhood, offering low-cost care to families who couldn't afford traditional services. Dante's hair went fully silver. They moved slower, laughed easier, held hands more. The past was still there. It never fully disappeared. Sometimes Sarah would wake from nightmares about warehouses and gunfire. Sometimes Dante would get calls from people connected to his old life, reminders that certain debts never expired. But they handled it together. On their 10th anniversary of remarrying, Dante took Sarah to the beach, the same coast where she'd hidden with Elena all those years ago, though a different town, different memories. They walked along the sand at sunset, Charlie, older now, graying around the muzzle, trotting ahead. Do you ever regret it? Dante asked. Coming back. Giving me another chance. No. Do you regret changing, becoming someone different? I didn't become different. I became better. There's a difference. He squeezed her hand. You made me better. We made each other better. That's how it works. They stood watching the ocean, the same water that had witnessed Sarah's desperation years ago, now witnessing her peace. Life had a strange way of circling back, of taking broken things and reshaping them into something new. Elena called that evening, excited about a project she was launching in Southeast Asia. Her voice carried the confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. Sarah listened to her daughter talk about changing the world and believed every word. After the call, Sarah found Dante in his study, looking at old photos. Her, heavily pregnant, in a picture she didn't know existed. Elena's first birthday. He must have had someone watching, documenting. 6 years of moments he'd missed, preserved in photographs taken from a distance. I kept them, he said quietly. All these years. Couldn't look at them without it hurting, but I couldn't throw them away either. Sarah studied the images. Her life from a stranger's perspective. The years she'd spent running, documented by people she'd never seen. We lost so much time, she said, but we got it back. Not the same moments, but new ones. Better ones. He was right. They couldn't reclaim what was lost, but they'd built something stronger from the ruins. That was enough. More than enough. Years continued to pass. Elena took over the foundation when she turned 25, expanding it beyond anything Sarah or Dante had imagined. She approached it with the precision of her father and the heart of her mother, creating real change in communities around the world. She never married, too focused on work, though she had relationships. Brought partners home for holidays, asked her parents' advice on matters of the heart, watched how Sarah and Dante navigated their imperfect marriage, and learned what commitment really meant. Dante developed health issues in his late 60s, nothing catastrophic, just the weight of a life lived hard catching up. Sarah was there through every doctor's appointment, every medication adjustment, every moment of vulnerability he tried to hide. I don't like being weak, he admitted one night after a particularly difficult day. You're not weak. You're human. There's a difference. I'm supposed to protect you. Supposed to be strong. You've been protecting me for 20 years. Let me protect you for a change. He did, reluctantly at first, then with more acceptance. Learning to lean on someone was hard for a man who'd built an empire on self-reliance. But he learned. They sold the big house eventually, downsizing to something more manageable. Kept Elena's room exactly as she'd left it for when she visited. Filled the smaller space with books and photos and Charlie's successor, a rescue dog Elena had brought home named Lucy. Sarah still practiced veterinary medicine part-time, unable to fully retire. Dante consulted for the foundation, lending his business acumen to Elena's vision. They were older, slower, but still purposeful. One evening, sitting on their porch watching sunset, Dante said, I need to tell you something. Sarah's heart lurched. What? Those first 6 years when you were gone, I wrote you letters, hundreds of them. Never sent them because I didn't know where you were. But I wrote them anyway. What did they say? Everything I should have said when we were married. Everything I realized too late. I kept them. Want to read them? Do I want to read years of regret and longing? That sounds depressing. Some of it is, but some of it is hope. Belief that I'd find you someday, that we'd get another chance. I was right about that part. He brought out a box from his study. Hundreds of letters, dated, sealed, never sent. Sarah opened one at random from 3 years into her disappearance. Cassandra, wherever you are, I hope you're happy. I hope you found peace. I hope someday you'll let me earn my way back into your life. I'm trying to become someone worthy of that chance. It's hard changing everything about how you operate, but you're worth it. You were always worth it. I just didn't see it until you were gone. D. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. You really spent 6 years changing for me? For you, for myself, for the possibility of us. He took her hand. Best investment I ever made. She kissed him, this man who'd been her captor and her savior, her tormentor and her partner, her greatest mistake and her best decision. Life was complicated that way. People were complicated. Elena came home for Christmas that year with an announcement. She was creating an autobiography project, not about herself, but about resilience. Interviewing people who'd overcome impossible odds, rebuilt from nothing, transformed their lives. I want to start with you two, she said. Your story deserves to be told. Our story is messy, Sarah protested. All the best ones are. That's the point. People need to know that happy endings aren't clean. They're fought for, rebuilt, constantly maintained. Your marriage is proof of that. They agreed, reluctantly. Spent hours talking to Elena about the past. Sarah's years running, Dante's years searching, the warehouse confrontation, the slow rebuilding of trust. Elena recorded everything, asked hard questions, pushed them to be honest about the ugly parts. Why did you take her back? Elena asked Dante. After she kept me from you for 6 years? Because being angry wouldn't give me back that time. All it would do is waste the time we had left. I chose forward over backward. And you? Elena turned to Sarah. Why did you trust him again? Because people can change. Not everyone, not easily, but it's possible. And I saw him trying, really trying. That mattered more than the past. The project became a book, then a documentary. Elena's production company turned it into something powerful, a story about redemption, second chances, imperfect families finding their way back to each other. It went viral. Millions of people saw their story, connected with it, found hope in it. Sarah was overwhelmed by the response. Letters from abuse survivors, from divorced parents trying to co-parent, from people who'd made terrible mistakes and didn't know if redemption was possible. We're not heroes, she told Dante one evening, reading through messages. We're just people who screwed up and tried to fix it. That's exactly why it resonates. Everyone screws up. Not everyone tries to fix it. The documentary's success led to more opportunities. Speaking engagements, interviews, requests for advice. Sarah and Dante declined most of them, uncomfortable with the spotlight. But Elena convinced them to do a few. Small talks at foundations, intimate conversations with groups working on family rehabilitation. Your story helps people, Elena insisted. Don't you want that? So they did it, shared their truth, the ugly and the beautiful parts, helped other fractured families see that broken didn't mean irreparable. Dante's health continued to decline slowly over the next few years. Nothing dramatic, just the steady accumulation of age and old wounds. Sarah stayed by his side, fierce in her devotion, refusing to let him give up. You don't get to leave me yet, she told him during a particularly rough patch. We have at least another 20 years planned. I'll do my best. He did. Fought through complications, adjusted to limitations, accepted help with more grace than anyone expected. Victor visited occasionally, the two old friends sitting in comfortable silence, remembering battles fought and won. Elena brought her partners home, finally settling down with someone who matched her intensity, a human rights lawyer with Elena's passion and Dante's strategic mind. They got married in the same garden where Sarah and Dante had renewed their vows, and Sarah cried through the entire ceremony. Our daughter is so happy, she told Dante that night. She learned from the best. We weren't the best example. We were the real example. That's better. They were in their 70s when Dante's doctors said the treatments weren't working anymore. The cancer that had been manageable for years was winning. He had maybe 6 months, maybe less. Elena took leave from work to be close. Sarah refused to leave Dante's side. They converted the downstairs guest room into a medical suite, brought in hospice care, made him as comfortable as possible. I'm not afraid, Dante said one afternoon. I've done terrible things, made peace with most of them. The only regret I have is not finding you sooner. We had 20 good years. That's more than some people get in a lifetime. Not enough. I wanted 50 more. Me too. They spent those final months talking, remembering, making peace with their story. Elena recorded some of it, not for publication, just for herself. Pieces of wisdom from a man who'd lived hard and learned harder. Take care of your mother, Dante told Elena one day. She's stronger than she looks, but she'll need you. I will, and Dad? The foundation? I'm going to make it bigger than either of us imagined, I promise. You already have. I'm proud of you. Prouder than I've ever been of anything. Dante died on a Tuesday morning in April, with Sarah holding his hand and Elena reading to him from a book about the ocean. He slipped away quietly, peacefully, without the violence that had marked so much of his life. Sarah broke completely. 23 years of second chances, of rebuilt trust, of hard-won happiness. And now he was gone. Elena held her mother while she sobbed, while she raged at the unfairness, while she grieved the loss of the man who'd been both her destruction and salvation. The funeral was huge despite their wishes. Hundreds of people whose lives Dante had touched through the foundation, through his business ventures, through his unlikely transformation. They told stories about his generosity, his sharp mind, his unexpected kindness. Sarah listened to them describe a man she'd helped create. The Dante Rossi they knew was different from the one she'd fled from all those years ago. Better. More human. He'd become that partly for her, but mostly for himself. That was his real redemption. Among his effects, Elena found something addressed to Sarah. A letter, dated from 3 weeks before his death. My love, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm not sorry. We both knew this was coming. But I wanted you to know that every moment with you was worth everything. The years of searching, the hard work of change, the humbling process of earning your trust again. All of it. You made me better. You gave me Elena. You gave me a reason to transform from monster to man. Thank you for the second chance. Thank you for staying. Thank you for loving me when I didn't deserve it, and even more when I finally did. Tell Elena I'm proud of her. Tell her to change the world. And you, live fully. Don't spend years grieving. I had a good life because of you. Make sure you have one too. All my love, always. Sarah read it 3 times, tears streaming. Then she folded it carefully and put it with the other letters he'd written her over the years. Evidence of a love that had survived everything. Grief was hard. Months passed where Sarah barely functioned, going through motions but not really living. Elena stayed close, worried about her mother, but respecting her process. He'd want you to be happy, Elena said one evening. I know. I'm working on it. It took time, longer than Sarah expected, but slowly she found her way back, started working at the clinic again. Reconnected with friends. Took Lucy for long walks on the beach, talking to Dante in her head about everything and nothing. The foundation continued to grow under Elena's leadership. They renamed it officially, the Dante and Cassandra Rossi Foundation for Children's Futures. Sarah joined the board, lending her perspective, honoring his memory by continuing the work. 5 years after Dante's death, Elena had a daughter. Named her Sophia, but they all called her Sophie. She had Dante's dark eyes and serious expression, and holding her made Sarah's chest ache with love and loss in equal measure. She would have loved him, Sarah told Elena, watching the baby sleep. She'll know him through us, through the stories, through the foundation, through everything he built. He'd be so proud of you. Of us. We did this together, you, me, him, all of us. Sarah lived to see Sophie grow up, to watch her granddaughter inherit the best parts of all of them. The determination, the kindness, the strategic mind, the fierce love of family. She lived to see the foundation expand to 50 countries, helping millions of children access education and healthcare. She lived to see Elena become one of the most influential philanthropists in the world, transforming how charitable work was done, proving that you could do good without sacrificing effectiveness. She lived a full life surrounded by love and purpose and the legacy she and Dante had built from the ashes of their first terrible marriage. When Sarah finally passed, peacefully in her sleep at 83, Elena found one more letter in her mother's effects. This one addressed to her. My darling Elena, if you're reading this, I've joined your father. I'm not sad about that. We had our time and it was good. But I wanted you to know some things. First, you were never a burden, never a complication. You were the best thing I ever did, the greatest gift I could have given myself and your father. Second, don't be afraid to love fully, even when it's messy. Your father and I made every mistake possible, but we found our way back. Love is worth fighting for. Third, keep changing the world. You're so good at it. Make sure Sophie knows her grandfather, knows what he became, not just what he was. And finally, be happy. Choose happiness the way I finally learned to, the way your father learned to. Life is too short for anything less. I love you forever, Mama Elena read it at the small memorial service, her voice breaking only once. Sophie, 15 now, and already showing signs of brilliance, held her mother's hand. Your great-grandma was amazing, Sophie said later. She was. Both your great-grandparents were complicated and imperfect and absolutely amazing. Tell me the story again. About the warehouse, about how great-grandpa saved them. Elena told it the way it had been told to her, the way it would be told to generations after. A story about imperfect people making terrible choices and somehow, impossibly, finding redemption. About love that survived everything. Betrayal, separation, violence, time itself. About a woman who ran and a man who searched and a child who brought them back together. About second chances and the courage to take them. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real.